On today's UpAGear TeamCast, I'm joined by the team coach legend that is John Murphy, team coach, exec coach, keynote speaker, podcaster extraordinaire, and my favourite Irishman. So
it's all downhill from here, I can tell you, after that introduction. It's definitely downhill.
Start with a compliment, they said, so I stacked a few in.
Yeah, actually, the listener is going to be so disappointed after that introduction. It can't possibly match all those lies you've just told.
Well, you've kept me going for years, John. So let's share a little bit of wisdom. But hey, okay. John, so you're over in France, aren't you? I think. Yeah, you're based in France.
That's correct. Yeah.
Sunshine.
Yeah, I've been now for nearly 10 years. So moved here, and yeah, so still run the business from here because, as you well know, where we live and where we base ourselves is relevant. You know, so much of my business is virtual coaching, one-to-one coaching, team coaching. You tend to do it well up until COVID, until at their businesses. But it's interesting actually, Dave, on that, because there are a couple of team programs that I was kind of in the middle of, and we've managed to keep those going during these times. So when everybody is in splendid isolation, so we've been able to do that. So and I think it talks to the importance of having a process around a team, and also your ability to adjust and be nimble in different circumstances.
Yeah, and I guess teams need helping adjusting to I hate the term the new normal, but whatever bizarre normality that we're
like you, I hate that term, but I can't think of a better one to actually replace it. Well, I think there is, because no matter what we say, we look at teams. I mean, if we talk about some of the data, right, to kick off, we know from research that is done that less than 10% of people say that the teams they're a member of is a high performing team. Which is really kind of a scary number in many ways, but it also shows that there's huge potential to actually achieve an awful lot more. And not all of those teams are failing, by the way, as teams. I mean, they might well actually be kind of generating the results they could, but it's actually showing what could be achieved. And I think the other stat that that is worth kind of sharing with everybody listening is that we know from the work that we do when we capture information at the start of a team process that teams are operating at an average of 61% of their potential. Again, you can look at that two ways. You can look at that as being negative, but you also look at it as positive. And also, don't forget that by and large, the teams that you and I and other members of the UpAGear community work with, they're actually teams that are doing well. They're not teams that are, absolute disasters. They're teams that are doing well, but we want to invest in them to perform at a higher level. And I think that even if you're never going to get 100% of potential, because that's just silly. But if we can just ratchet that up, I mean, if you think of a team at the average of 61%, in 12 months' time, if that could be 71%, that's got a massive impact on the results the team is achieving, on the way the team is behaving, and also is giving them a platform to go forward. So, there's very compelling reasons as to why every team should be going through a process. And it's not that you're putting them through a process because they're broken. We're actually putting them through a process because, there's an awful lot more that can be got from that team.
Yeah. So what are you, what are the reasons why you would recommend teams having a team coach? What would, what are the benefits, I guess, benefits?
Yeah, well, I mean, I know somebody's going to say, well, he is one, so of course he's going to say that. But I mean, but let me actually stand back. I mean, prior to doing this work, as you know, Dave, I was on the other side. I was on the corporate side. So, I was running teams and leading teams. And I always had the view that, in terms of actually developing a team and growing a team, I might be the sales manager or the managing director or the CEO because I've got certain skills. But it doesn't mean that I've got the skill to actually really, bring a team to another level. So if I want some work done, and I've always maintained this, in not just in this space, but in any other space, is that, I want the expert in that space to come in and work with me on the team. And, I mean, yeah, I think the kind of the old example is that, if I'm undergoing, a heart, transplant or something, and the guy says, oh, well, I'm good at a bit of this and a bit of that. I'm not going to feel too comfortable on the operating table. So I really want somebody that's got a real, who's a real expert in the space. So, I mean, I think the expertise, that recognized expertise is hugely important. And I think the second reason that I get is that, an expert in that space will have a process to actually get a team from where they are to where you want them to get to, or where the team wants to get to. And I use the word process very, very carefully because, you hear, oh, well, let's go out and, climb a mountain and we'll bond and we'll gel and that'll solve it. Yeah, listen, if you want to go off and have a good day, go off and have a good day. I'm not knocking it. It can be a great day. It can be a great event. But if you're talking about transformation, that's not going to do it. They'll have a nice day out and it'll be forgotten within a few days, right? So you need to have a process.
Sometimes, John, isn't it? I mean, it's, get back, turn the phones on and find all the emails have been stacked up during the day. And then it's like, how do we hardwire this back in?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that you're not actually, as I said, I say to anyone who kind of said, well, maybe I just kind of do that. I say, well, fine, if you want to give them a day out, give them a day out. Yeah. But if you actually want to actually have a transformational experience, you're not going to get that with an event. And also don't forget, and as you and I both know, when you're working with a team, people actually get it and what you're doing at different paces, right? Because what you'll find is when you're working with a team, there's some people will kind of immediately get it because of where they are in their lives, where they are in their careers, where they are in their comfort, whatever it might be, will get it. But everybody has got different things going on in their lives. And so the pace at which you get, and we've all been there kind of through a different process where, I know I have that kind of, by working through a process, and I kind of I might struggle at the beginning, but then kind of, 2 months down the road, you kind of go, oh, now I get it, right? And it's getting it intellectually and it's getting it emotionally. So, I think that's why the process is really important, because not everybody hears the same thing at the same time. And it's actually coming back and reviewing it and renewing it is going to get it. And I think that's such an important point. The third thing that I'd say that's actually really important is that, well, somebody will say, well, if I'm the manager, sure, well, isn't that my job to do it, right? And, and that's kind of, sorry, just turning on some air conditioning. I was just realizing I was getting warm.
I mean, you're now really rubbing it in. I mean, the sun is shining here, but no need for air conditioning.
Just thought I'd drop it in. Anyway, yeah, but I think, for the manager to actually lead the process is a challenge. And I certainly found that when I was in the corporate world, that it was far better for me to be a participant in it and not have the responsibility, oh, what are we going to talk about next? And have I got everything done? Have I got everything set up? So I don't have to worry or be concerned about that. I let the expert do what the expert is expert at, and I can participate. And I think that and also be an observer, because it's an opportunity for the manager to observe their team. It's very hard to be an observer and actually, if you're not used to running a team workshop, particularly if you're the boss of the people in the room, right? So it's very, very hard to do that. So by allowing somebody else to take the lead and to manage that process, they can, you really can be an observer of the team, but also by having that other person leading it, you're getting the benefit of the observations of that person who's leading the team. Because, I sit with the manager afterwards and say, I'll ask her, what did you see? And then I'll share what I saw, right? And they're always going to be because we're both looking at it from a different perspective, we've got a different perspective, we're looking for different things, and we see different things. And that's really helpful for the manager. But if the manager is actually trying to run it, then it actually puts a huge pressure. I'm sure you found that with people who are running teams.
Yeah, I think one of the things I find is that actually it's quite difficult as a leader to listen to your people when you're too busy working out what hat am I wearing at the moment. Is it the manager hat? Is it the leader hat? Is it the facilitator hat? I've got to drive this agenda. Have we got and then suddenly you find have we got lunch booked? Are we, where are we on time? All those sort of things, and it's very difficult to spot some of the nuances that are going on in the room, and it's probably really quite difficult to be truly honest with yourself about, are people on board with me or not, or are they just going through the motions?
Yeah, and I think that, I think to go back to some research, I think that the research about meetings is that by and large, the person who's leading the meeting scores the meeting higher than anybody else, right? And that tends to be the manager in that situation. So, and as the facilitator of the group, I would always say that the facilitator is not the dominant person in the room by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it's a bit like a bit like watching a football match. If the person you remember most from the football match is the ref, then the ref has done a pretty bad job. Yeah. So the facilitator's got to be in there and kind of watching what's going on and just guiding it gently, but is not the star performer. But I think having a process and having a kind of a coach guide it is that the process allows you to have kind of the check-ins, because you've got to go back in, you've got to check in. This is what we said we were going to do. These are the changes we said we were going to make sure happened. And you have everyone's got a different perspective of how that has been done. I mean, if there's straightforward black and white things done, not done, that's easy. But in terms of behavioral change, then you've actually got to facilitate the conversation about, well, what does that mean and what does that look like? So having a process where you're having the regular check-ins is absolutely fundamental to the success of the program. Because again, it comes back to not having just event. But I think the fifth reason that I would say for having a coach there is that it allows the team to speak more freely, and without fear of being seen to be critical of the manager. Right? If it's the manager standing at the front of the room, it's kind of a bit difficult for the people who report to him to start being critical of the team and the environment and everything else, because it sounds like it's being critical of him or her, right? And whereas as a facilitator, you can actually remove that and you can just talk about what's going right, what's not going right, what could be better, and all of that. So it allows the team and creates the space where the team can actually speak a lot more freely, but particularly about the things that are not going so well. Because I suppose it's a bit like if you're a parent, if anybody criticizes your children, you immediately get defensive, right? And in the same way, is if the team is kind of talking about their manager, it's a bit like giving out about their parent in front of everybody else, right? So that doesn't actually sit terribly well with people. So the coach can facilitate that conversation to actually get what are the underlying issues out on the table and discussed. Because unless you're getting those issues out on the table and discussed, then progress doesn't happen. Or if you do, it's very much on the surface, right? You're actually not going deep. You've got to have those conversations. And sometimes it can be actually about the way the manager is doing things. And you've got to make sure that that conversation gets out. And a good facilitator will ensure that those issues don't get left unsaid and don't get avoided just because the manager's in the room. And you can do that quite easily if you're an experienced coach and facilitator, but it's very hard for the manager to try and do that too. So I think that's really, really important in terms of kind of getting the conversation and getting openness in it. Yeah. The other reason, the sixth reason I think that you need a coach is that a good coach will actually, challenge the status quo, the sacred cows, all of the thorny questions, and challenge behavior. because you see them in action, because you're watching them and you're seeing it going on, and you can challenge, and you can say, listen, this is what I see.
Yeah.
Right. So you can actually bring all of those out. You also would have known from kind of interviews you've done beforehand with the team members, you know what they are. So you're able to bring them out. Very difficult for the manager to actually put something out on the table that is kind of something that's been part of the status quo that they've been party to.
Yeah.
So, it's very, very difficult to do that. So you really can challenge the state, which is what everybody wants fundamentally, is that if we're going to be transformational, we need to take everything out, have a good look at it, and decide, okay, are we happy with that? Or do we want to change it? Or do we just put it back and it's fine? Or do we actually want to change that? But the good coach can keep on challenging that and actually get those issues out on the table and discussed in a very free way. The manager, with the best will in the world, the manager is not really in a position to do that. Because to an extent, the manager is part of what has been going on in the organization, what has been going on in that team. And I think that, it's much easier for you as the coach to bring that out on the table. And I think that, the seventh reason I say is that you're not part of the politics. Because the politics exist, but there's no point in pretending there are no politics, because in every organization there are politics. And you can play the role, and you're not, as a facilitator and as a coach, you don't get into the politics. Well, and if you do, you're kind of dead in the water as a coach, to be honest with you.
You are, yeah, absolutely. We're the custodians of the uncomfortable truth. I think, a lot of the time, and there are certainly times I found, and I'm sure you have as well, where you know what needs to be said, and you'd go and draw that big deep breath in and just plant it and hold that tension with the team at that particular point in time. Yeah. You see the look of daggers that are coming back from you from around the room, but then actually people start nodding and reflecting on, yeah, okay, yeah, you got us.
Yeah, and I think that's actually such a, it's such an important part. And, when you get into the politics, again, it's very difficult for the manager to actually talk about that, to raise it. And also there's a concern about, well, yeah, and if I raise it and if I open that can of worms, can I actually put it back together again? And a good coach can actually get those issues out, can really, really, challenge them, can really, really discuss them, can dissect them, and also, even if, I mean, I know that because you and I've worked together, you can say somebody in the room says something, you kind of go, okay, well, there's more to that. You've said a certain amount, but I know you haven't said it all. I just get a sense from you there's something else. What is that? And you can follow that and follow that and follow that until you actually get them to talk and kind of be open about what the issue is. But you can actually stay above it. And, and the eighth reason I'd say is that you can hold a team accountable in a very robust way, because there's no, somebody can't be mad at me at a meeting because I'm holding them accountable, really accountable. Somebody said, well, I said, oh, well, I was a bit busy. Yeah, okay, well, did you not think you were going to be busy? I mean, what did you think you were going to be doing, right? So you can be very robust and direct in that way. And, somebody can be annoyed with me for challenging them, really, really hard. But I'm gone a few hours later, right? But the manager isn't, right? Yep. So the manager is always kind of tempering. Well, okay, well, now I've got, Mary or Jimmy or Joe or whoever they might be, and I need them to do something else. Will I actually go that harsh on them, or maybe it's something that I've been asking them to do and I've asked other things, so it gets more complicated. Whereas the coach, you can be very, very blunt and very, very direct. And very, very challenging, and even if it's very uncomfortable, I would always say, listen, you can be pissed off at me, but I don't really care, because I be leaving the office in a few hours.
Absolutely.
So I think that it is, and that could be very difficult for the manager to be that robust in that, because there could be lots of other stuff going on, and you may feel uncomfortable for whatever reason. Right. But also, he's kind of, may feel, slightly insecure about being that robust in front of everybody else. And is that people are going to take it? But if you're brought in as the coach, you've a license to do that. And to be honest, I take that role very seriously, that's part of my job, is to deliver the result. Right. The ninth reason that I think that it's important to have a coach in is that when you create a process, one of the things that you've got to be able to do is adjust it. Because, the old Mike Tyson line that, everyone has a plan until they get punched is very true. And God knows this year is probably a very good example of it.
We've been punched.
Yeah.
Everyone's been punched.
Everyone's been punched. You have a plan, but then, then it's to get in and adjust and do that, and it's much easier for the manager if you've got somebody who's kind of not say, because the coach's never going to say what you've got to do, but actually managing the conversation to come to decisions about how you're going to adjust it. But it becomes part of the process of how the team works. So that you've got a place where you're going to come together, you're going to review the plan. This is going to be, a dynamic plan. And boy, this year it has to be a dynamic plan, but it's going to be a dynamic plan that we can come and we can adjust. And I think that, that's what's really important, that you've actually got somebody to do that so that you can be part of the discussion and not have the responsibility of running the discussion. Because if you're running the discussion, your head is in, well, have I got everybody's input? Have we got it right? So you have a different thought process going on. Mm-hmm. Whereas you've got a coach guiding that for you, you can be much more in the plan and determining, is this actually in line with the strategy? And you can, we can work with the coach to make sure you're doing that, but you're able to participate and engage it in an awful lot. And the final reason, there are other reasons, but the final reason I thought of in terms of why I have a coach is that working with a coach and an expert coach embeds a process of how you work together as a team, right? And that's not just for the period of time of when the coach is working with you, right? What you're doing is that you're embedding a process so that, it's not, I would always say it's not for me to create a dependency upon me. That's not the intention. The intention is that I work with the team, give you a process, and then you take it on from there, right? And if you want me to come back in at a future time, that's fine. But now you have a kind of a process and a framework with which you can work, and you've now created new habits that are going to help you transform the business. And you've got a process that you can wrap around and that you can have meaningful discussions. And you have created that safe place for people to have those conversations and those debates. So I think that, for all of those reasons, Dave, and the original question was why I have a coach. I'm sure there are others, but if I think about it, they're really why I believe you should have, and why every team should invest in getting an experienced coach to work with their team. It's nothing by any means a statement of abdication. In fact, I'd say quite the opposite. I think it's actually making a statement is that you're an insightful leader, and what you're doing is that you're bringing expert status into the room in the specific area which you need it, and you're investing in the team to actually get the team to be far more effective and to be optimizing the potential of that team, which at the end of the day is your job as the leader. And what you're doing is using the tools to actually help you to get there quicker. Yeah. So for all of those reasons, I always think that if you talk and insightful leaders know this intuitively, right? Yeah. But I think it's also being really clear as the facilitator, as the coach, is kind of what is the role that you're playing in this process and in this engagement. And and I've been on the receiving end, and somebody we both know very, very well, Ralph Peters. When I was in the corporate world, I utilized Ralph as a coach and facilitator a lot. And it enabled me to do the things that I've talked about here. And yes, there was, I could input obviously, but I was also able to really be an observer of the process, a participant and an observer of the process. And it allowed me to actually really fast track the progress of the team. So yeah, I'm a huge believer in the validity and the power of bringing in an external coach to really make the difference in your team and to accelerate it.
Yeah, and we see it in lots of other aspects of business, don't we, John? Whether it's an executive director sitting with boards, where there's a level of independence that's sitting in there, bringing in, specific advisors into, in particular points. And yet that big thing, I mean, I was really, really struck with that research and took through 61% of people don't believe, or 61% of, teams achieve 61% of the things that they set out to do. Well, gosh, that's, if ever there was a case to say, hey, we need a bit of help here.
Yeah, and I think that, and that stat stat has come from teams, that are successful. It's not that they're failing, right? Yeah. But just when you look at if you look at all of the skills, all of the resources, because, as you well know, it's not just kind of get a number of people and, and you put them together in a room and, kind of one and one makes, 4, whatever it might be, right? It's actually that a real team, they leverage each other, yeah, so that it becomes greater than the sum of the individual. And that's the whole purpose of having a team. It's not a question of having just the sum totals of the individuals, but a really effective team really they leverage each other. I mean, I think one of the definitions that I always think is really important to understand, when you're talking about a high-performing team, one of the criteria to be a really high-performing team is that the team actually takes responsibility for each other's development and participates in it. Now, that's a hell of a level to get to, right? And let's be honest about it, there are a few that will actually get there, right? That's just a reality.
Yep.
But it's the journey to get there. It's the old story. It's not about the destination. It is about the journey. And, and I said, if it's 61% today, and we could get that to 70% in 12 months' time, the impact that would have not only on the bottom line results, right, but in terms of the growth in the individuals, the satisfaction of the individuals, the retention of those individuals would be immense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, amen. I completely applaud that. And I think I'm struck by, successful sport teams a lot of the times where players talk about, actually, when I was in that team, they made me, my teammates made me a better player.
Yes.
And, so often I see that you'll go and meet a potential client, you're working with them, you start doing the one-to-one interviews. The leader at some point will say to me, who do you think the weak link in my team is? Or, actually, if only this person was substantially, substantially better. And often that is not the case. Often it is actually, they've got, perfectly good individuals. They're just not quite gelling or connecting or, getting into some of those uncomfortable truths that we know that we can help them to achieve.
So, I mean, I think that, there are all the reasons that I would give you, Dave, for a compelling reason as to why you should have a coach working with the team, with any team. I think that it is the ROI on that. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, just going back to 61%, if you were just to get that to 70,
yep,
the ROI on, by any means, the ROI on the investment that you would make to actually get a coach to work with you for 12 months, the ROI on that would be phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Incredible. If you think about it. Because if you think about, you think of the average team, say, is 10 people, the average cost of that, and you get, 9 to 10% improvement. We're far too cheap, actually. We should increase our price.
Let's go back to those rate cards and have a
exactly. But I just think it's a really important point, and I just think that, in terms of a leader who really wants to ramp up, get yourself a good team coach, because it would pay dividends time over.
Right. Well, John, look, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for
Dave. It's great to see you again.
And yeah, well, let's catch up sort of later in the series, and pick your brain on some of those other areas of that list of John Murphy expertise that I read out.
Dave, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers, John. Thanks a lot.